He's a New York Times best-selling author, ESPN commentator, and you can see him on the SEC Network and heard on ESPN Radio, host of the Paul Finebaum Show on Sirius XM. Paul joins us on the program. How would you sum up the week in college football this week, Paul?
It was tumultuous, Dan, with so many different things going on, from the social unrest piece of the puzzle to rising COVID rates in Texas. Anthony Fauci here yesterday pouring a little cold water on the positivity train. It was not a good week.
In particular, Oklahoma State with Mike Gundy, is he talking himself out of trouble or talking himself into even more trouble?
I think Mike Gundy is talking himself into being a commentator on some network fairly soon, because I don't think he can last much longer. I mean, he started the week off in bad shape, and then he kept talking and talking. And I'm not going to quote Shakespeare about protesting too much, because he really never made any sense. And he went from wearing a One America News Network T-shirt, which seemed innocuous, even though he has supported it in the past, to then disparaging them after acknowledging that he didn't really understand why his players were so upset. I mean, it was a incalculably bad week for Mike Gundy, and he's really well known for one thing, Dan. He gave a memorable speech. I'm 40 and I'm a man. He's 50 now, and he's a buffoon.
If you ran Oklahoma State's athletic program, what would you do?
I would get rid of him, and it's not because of a T-shirt. I know a lot of people on certain political ideologies want to make it into that. I just think he's miscalculated so many times. He's embarrassed himself and the university so many times, and not to get to actual football matters, but he's 2-13 against Oklahoma, Dan. That doesn't work. I mean, I know John Cooper tried that trick at Ohio State about 25 years ago and finally caught up to him. At some point, even though he's got a good record by Oklahoma State standards, which is not very high, I think he needs to go.
Yeah, when you go 7-6, 8-5 the last 2 years, that would put you on thin ice, certainly in that conference there. But I'm waiting to find out if his players are truly accepting of this, because if they are, then that's their world, that's their coach, and I would accept it. From an outsider looking in, if I'm a player, I would not accept that, and I would ask for change if I could at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and I don't really think it's a close call. I mean, sometimes these are very narrow. These are 5-4 decisions. Not to sound like I'm covering the Supreme Court here on the DP show, although I've always wanted to cover the Supreme Court. But I mean, they can do better. I mean, I'd fire him just for the mullet alone, Dan.
You got Ole Miss on the clock now. The SEC is finally like. What is the state of Mississippi? Like, the SEC statement is basically saying to Ole Miss what?
Well, it's interesting. I thought the commissioner was interesting in how he did it. I mean, he went after the state flag, which has the Confederate flag in the corner. He avoided criticizing Ole Miss, whose nickname, don't be shocked here, Dan, the Rebels. That one was not, but here's where I think, I mean, if the commissioner of the SEC or somebody said to the KA fraternity at Ole Miss, you can't have your rebel flag up when you walk in, or your Old South party, which is the biggest night of the year, then I think we're really having a serious conversation. I'm joking about that, but you've been on fraternity row in a million campuses, and you will see a Confederate flag in a lot of them, especially in that one. But I think it was symbolically, it's a good move. I'm not sure what it really means, though, if it's going to have a lot of impact.
Is Ole Miss called Ole Miss? Is Ole Miss on their helmets next season?
If we have a season, probably not.
And I don't know how we play football. I know that everybody keeps saying, hey, football, you got time to figure this out. You got 100 players on these teams, Paul. I mean, if you just do the math, I think it's wishful. I think it's optimism, but I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I'm just cautious with all of this, Paul.
Dan, I've interviewed every commissioner in college football a couple of times now, every athletic director, and they all say we're very hopeful, we're optimistic. It sounds like you're at the Paris peace talks from 50 years ago. That we had a very substantive meeting. The bottom line is nobody wants to be the person who says we're not going to have college football. Kirk Herbstreit about 8 weeks ago came out and he said we're not having college football season, and he hasn't been seen since. I mean, he's been in a bunker, and he's afraid to come out because you don't want to be that guy. I mean, there are people who I've just read, well-known commentators assassinating Anthony Fauci's credibility because he came on and said it's doubtful. I don't know how you do it. I agree with you, and it's not my decision. I'm a commentator and talk show host like you are, but I think it's an incredibly big challenge. And not only are some saying we're going to have it, there's athletic directors in Texas saying we're going to have 50 to 75% capacity in the stands. I mean, that's even more outrageous to consider than even having a season, which you could start a season maybe. I think the challenge is what everyone says, getting to the end of it.
Talking to Paul Finebaum of the Mothership, I was wondering about this, and I proposed this. I don't even know what day it is, but months ago. Can you have the students go back in August and they go to Thanksgiving, and then you could have football start as I know the student's going to want to be there for football, but if you're trying, this is about money. This is all about money, and certainly with the NFL, certainly with baseball. Maybe college is not as heavy-handed, but can I squeeze in a college football season that starts after Thanksgiving and still accomplish? Maybe it's an abbreviated season. What's the likelihood of college football starting later than earlier?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll college football people will start it whenever they have to start it. They don't care. But the problem with that though is it's about a 15-week season under normal circumstances, and if you start it then, you're really in a more dangerous time of the year for not only COVID but for the flu.
I know.
That's the peak of the flu season, and I don't want to sound like I know too much about this. I happen to be married to a doctor, so I hear it every night when she looks at me like, "Are you talking about having a college football season on your show?" But I don't know. I mean, the truth is they're going to try. I mean, I think I had a person tell me this to show you how crazy it is. I had a person tell me this that some coaches are hoping that all these players will get it, maybe they won't get it again, and you can have the season. But yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense. It obviously doesn't. But can we trust college coaches to even be honest about these tests once we get to the season? I mean, you talk about getting ready for the Ohio State Michigan game, the Alabama Auburn game, the Georgia Florida game. Are coaches going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, my star player tested positive. I'm going to quarantine him in the offensive line"? I mean, college football is ripe with lying and cheating and fraudulence and deception, and I don't think this would be any different.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And we joked about it, that maybe knowing Saban, hey, everybody gets sick, so then we're ready and nobody else is ready. A team activity. Come on out. We're gonna take everybody go to the lake house. We're going. It's a Corona party in more ways than one. Come on in. It's on me. But yeah,
we're gonna be like Sweden.
I just don't. I want to have college football, but that doesn't mean we're going to have college football. If I said starting on time, the odds of starting on time for all of these conferences is what?
I think some will start on Labor Day weekend, and I know I'm not giving you a namby-pamby answer. I don't think everyone will, and I think that's where the dysfunctionality of the season will begin. The only thing that will stop that is this: that students start arriving back on campus in late August, and the problem just blows up. And college presidents, like the one at Michigan who spoke out a couple weeks ago, just say, you know what, we can't do it, and then there's a trickle down effect. But right now, it's just like politics. Nobody wants to speak up in Washington, D.C., and it's the same in college athletics. Nobody wants to be the one that stops and asks the question, what are we doing here? Is this really safe? All they seem to be doing is let's get to the season so we can start cashing those TV network checks.
Paul, great to talk to you. Hope you're well, and thanks for joining us.
Dan, always a pleasure. Be well.
That's Paul Finebaum of the Mothership, New York Times bestselling author, and of course, host of the Paul Finebaum Show on Sirius XM.